Salvete omnes. Hello, I'm Decimus Aurelius, and welcome to the presentation this evening. Thanks to those that are joining us live, and thank you to those that are actually watching this in the future and for your interest. Yes, tonight is on the Magical Gems and Jewellery from Bronze Age Greece to the Roman Empire, and we're very lucky to have that presented to us tonight by Dr. Carolyn Tully and one of our own here in Provincia, Australia, Talia Cynthia Silvana. So it's fantastic to have her. So Dr. Carolyn Tully is an archaeologist at the University of Melbourne here in Australia, and she's also the author of The Cultic Life of Trees in the Prehistoric Aegean, Levant, Egypt and Cyprus inside Peters, published 2018 rather. And she's also author of many other academic and popular articles. Dr. Tully is an expert on Egyptomania and the religion of the Minoan Crete, and has many other interests including ancient Mediterranean religions and contemporary paganisms. And Dr. Tully has curated exhibitions on Egyptian, Greek and Roman antiquities, and regularly presents lectures and workshops on ancient religion and magic. And as you would have seen in the event registration link was some of her links to her works, particularly such as her work and blog on necropolisnow.blogspot.com, as well you can go to academia.edu to look up her profile as well. So yeah, it is a distinct privilege to have her, give her time this evening. And so without further delay, over to you, Dr. Carolyn Tully. Thank you so much.
Thank you, and thanks for inviting me. Now, I might just start by explaining how I came to be in Nova Roma in the first place. So years and years ago, I started to find out, remember we used to have Yahoo email lists, and they were really fantastic, and they actually told us a lot of really, they were, you know, then it's nothing like social media now. That the demise of the Yahoo groups, the content never moved to social media. I don't know where it went. Anyway, so I discovered pagan reconstructionism, I don't know, 2004, 2005 maybe, and one of them was Religio Romana, and that was Nova Roma who was running that Yahoo group, and I was really interested in Roman religion, and so I was, you know, following that and starting to kind of learn about Roman religion, and I got so interested in Roman religion that I ended up actually going to the University of Melbourne to study, specifically to study Roman religion. But in the course of my time there, I got completely seduced onto the Aegean Bronze Age, although I did do, you know, I did study Roman, not just Roman religion, but Roman social history as well for quite a while. But, you know, that was quite a while ago, and I've been completely seduced into other times and regions, although I still really love Rome. I especially love Roman gardens and like, you know, Roman, frescoes. Who doesn't love Roman frescoes? Anyway, now let's start. So basically this is, now you can see it says Magical Gems and Jewellery, Healing and the Stars. So the Healing and the Stars bit, that's actually from a workshop that I probably won't get into because it's not really relevant to this talk. So I'm just going to probably go up Magical Gems and Jewellery, possibly go into healing depending on what the time is. Now, can people see me in the little square thing? Can you see me?
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Just because I can see you. Okay, all right. So I'm just going to turn on my light, and basically I'll be sort of doing a mix of reading and sort of extemporizing, and if people want to jump in and ask me a question at the time, that's fine, or they can ask questions later. Okay, so now really this started off, so I'm starting off with a few things that are not Roman, but don't worry, that won't take ages, and then we'll get into the very exciting engraved gems. So basically this presentation starts off looking at witches' necklaces because originally I did this for a witchy audience at a shop I work at in the city called Muses of Mystery. And so witches' necklaces are traditionally made of, British traditional witchcraft necklaces are made of amber and jet, and this is good to at least start thinking about materials for, you know, later looking at Roman Empire period gems. So amber is the fossilized tree resin from a prehistoric pine tree that was common in the Baltic region, so that's Denmark, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Germany, Lithuania, Poland, Russia, Sweden, etc. And it's interestingly, amber is around 25 to 60 million years old, and specimens can function, we know about Specimens can function as tiny time capsules when they contain long extinct insects and plants, and I think even little dinosaur feathers and things like that I've seen recently. So amber has a low density and it can float in seawater, and that's why it's often found on beaches. So the ancient Greeks noted how amber becomes charged when it's rubbed on something like fur or wool, and the word for amber in Greek is electron, which is the root of the word electricity. And in Greek myth, amber is the tears of the Heliades, or the sun nymphs, who are the daughters of Helios, the sun, and they're crying for their brother Phaethon. Because he, as you may know, he wanted to use his father's chariot, and he had a go, and of course he couldn't control it, so he's driving the sun chariot. He's going too far away, and everyone on Earth is getting really cold. He comes too close, everyone on Earth is like burning up, and eventually Zeus had to actually just shoot him down and kill him. I'm not sure if he really had to shoot him, but that's what happened. And so his sisters were crying for him, and they turn into poplar trees, I think. And the Norse goddess Freya also cries amber tears when she happens to be crying. Now, the other ingredient of this necklace is jet. And jet is a type of lignite made of fossilized compressed wood. So again, it's a wood product. So it's really coal, a type of coal. And like coal, it's readily flammable. And when rubbed, it also produces an electric charge like amber. And the best jet is found in Whitby, which is in the UK, and it comes from the driftwood of the chili pine or monkey puzzle tree. So neither amber and jet are stones. They're actually, one's a resin and one's a fossilized wood. Yeah. So I was going to say, so basically with contemporary witches, when usually they make their own necklace by buying an amber necklace and buying a jet necklace, then pulling it apart and then rethreading them themselves. So another type of witch necklace is moonstone, which is an opalescent variety of feldspar, and the Romans believed it was solidified rays of the moon. And its blue or white sheen is called adularescence, and it's the result of the presence of tiny crystals of albite arranged in layers. And the best moonstones are from Sri Lanka and Burma. So now this is my specialty really here. It's the Minoan rings. I'm just going to plug my book, which I just happen to have right here. So my PhD thesis is on, can you see that? Do I need to?
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So that's my book, which is basically it's called The Cultic Life of Trees in the Prehistoric Aegean, Levant, Egypt and Cyprus. And it is basically looking at these gold rings. That's me modelling this gold ring. So these gold rings date to the Aegean Bronze Age. Let's give around sort of a general date of let's say 1500 BCE. And these ones I studied for my PhD thesis all have images of trees in them. So you can see this one. This is the drawing of the ring. So you can see there's a tree here. There's a little female figure picking. Some people think this is actually grapevines trained on a tree, which I didn't believe at first, but I'm not so against that idea now. Anyway, little girl picking whatever that fruit is. A female figure sitting here in the typical Minoan flounced skirt, and she's holding opium poppies, and some people think she might be some sort of proto-Demeter figure. Here's another little girl bringing her some flowers. There's a larger female figure bringing her, she probably just gave her those poppies. This double axe is actually hovering, which I'll talk about a little bit more later. Then we have another female figure with some lilies. And then up here we have, this is a figure of 8 shield. And this is a little female, or possibly a female figure, holding a little like a spear, and the body is a figure of 8 shield, and it could be like a proto-Athena. And here we have, these are animal heads, probably lion heads, and this is like just the skyline and etc. So basically these rings were used for stamp sealing into clay to verify documents or other sort of important things. So they were for stamping. Now let's have a look at another one. So here is a famous one. This is me modelling it again. This one's in the Ashmolean Museum in Oxford, and this is a very famous one called the Ring of Nestor. And some scholars, they're going, is this a tree? Is this a river? Arthur Evans, who excavated the Palace of Knossos in around 1900, he thought this was rivers. You can see it's engraved here. And so when you actually seal it, this is actually raised. So I think it's more likely to be a tree. But Evans thought it was rivers, and he thought this might be an afterworld scene. But because there's a lot of trees in cult scenes in Minoan religion, which is the Aegean Bronze Age, Crete and thereabouts, it could still be an afterlife scene, or certainly a supernatural scene, because there's a griffin here, there's a lion up in a tree. That's, you know, that doesn't usually happen. There's this could be what is called a Minoan dragon, although someone recently has suggested this is a scorpion, etc., etc. So, and you can see the size. So it's a huge ring. This one's actually solid, which is quite unusual. Most of them are hollow, but that's my little finger. And my little finger is not that big, and it only fits to there on my little finger. So if people have asked, you know, were the Minoans just really small, or did they perhaps only wear the rings on the first knuckle? Because it's a lot easier to stamp into clay like that than if you have it up here and you go, oh, or you have to take it off and sort of hold it. But we don't really know. We don't know why they're so small. So some of them are bigger than others. Oh, there's just a close-up of me with gloves on this time. Oh, hang on, me with the ring of Nestor. Then here, this, again, here's me modelling another ring. So this one's a little bit bigger. This one is from Tiryns in the Greek Argolid. So that's near Mycenae, where Agamemnon and Clytemnestra and all them were in myth and perhaps in reality. Anyway, this is a scene with a female figure, possibly a queen or a goddess. I'll explain that in a minute. A powerful figure because there's a bird of prey behind them, and these creatures are called Minoan geniuses, and they actually come from the Egyptian goddess Taweret, who's a hippopotamus goddess of childbirth. But by the time the Minoans adopted them, they got this wasp waist, which is typical of the Minoan silhouette, and they became male as well. And they're completely different creatures, but they come from Taweret. And then here we have, this is the night sky, and these are possibly shooting stars. That's maybe the sun. Obviously, that's the moon. There's a lot of speculation in Minoan religion because we don't have deciphered texts. So we have Linear B, which is when the Mycenaeans, who were the Proto-Greeks, they came over and took over the palaces in Crete in the late Bronze Age, and they used the Minoan script Linear A to write their Proto-Greek language, and that's Linear B. And so we know Linear B is a type of Greek, but Linear A, we don't know what language it is, and we can't read it. And that's because there's not enough of it to be able to decipher it, because apparently you need a certain amount of a language to be able to decipher it. So sometimes they can work out what words are by looking at Linear B, the signs, but they don't know, and I say they because I don't do the language at all. So other experts don't know, they don't know what language it is. It could be a language from southern Turkey, which was called Anatolia. We don't really know. Okay, now I'm just going to keep going with the Minoan stuff. So here, oh yeah, so this ring, the Ring of Tiryns, which is the one we just looked at, that was the biggest one around. But there was an excavation in 2015 at Pylos, or Pylos, where, you know, sandy Pylos, where Nestor, King Nestor from the Iliad, where his palace was, and they found these, super exciting, found these rings. So what happened, they'd been excavating there for decades, and they started sort of tripping over this bit of dirt, and they go, what is that? What is that? And eventually they realized, they went, oh, that's sort of stone. What's that? And they sort of went, that's a corner, and they went, oh my God, that's a tomb. So they dug, and they found a really exciting thing, which is the whole kind of tomb is called the Griffin Warrior Tomb. And it was a male with all this weaponry, but also cosmetic stuff like tweezers and mirrors and things like that. And that, you know, was great evidence for people that like to write about warrior beauty, because, you know, the warriors were kind of vain. But also on his chest, there were these 4 rings, and they may have been put in by mourners, or they may have been his, but they probably put in there by mourners around the grave, and also on his chest were, like, I can't remember the amount, but a lot of stone seals, and we'll see some stone seals soon. So basically, this is now the biggest Minoan-style gold ring, since 2015. So this is all exciting because we've seen the bull leaping before, but a lot of this iconography, well, actually now I'll have to explain that, we haven't seen before. So it's always exciting when they find iconography that contributes to the repertoire, because we know there's about 11,000 what they call seal faces, which include images on stone seals and gold rings. And there's about a bit more than 300 gold rings. Some of them are actual gold rings, but some are only, I shouldn't say there are over 300 gold rings. There's over 300 images from gold rings. Some are actually on gold rings, but some are actually just clay impressions of gold rings. So we know there's these particular images, but we don't have the ring. And in fact, in Minoan glyptic, no clay sealings match any seals or rings. So there's no matching. There's either the seal with a particular image and the ring, and there's clay sealings, but none of them match just because they haven't found the matches. Anyway, so this is now obviously it's not this big. It's about 4.47 cm long, which is not very long, but for a Minoan ring. So we've seen this sort of configuration before, and we've seen these on other seals. This is the sea, this is sand, these are rocks. Minoans do the rocks really weirdly. 2 palm trees, and then a columnar shrine, because it's made of columns, but this is probably actually little stacked, it could be little stacked stones or that sort of thing. And then there's a tree on top. And then there's rocks up here as well, and that's just a kooky thing the Minoans do. They do rocks up the top. But the really exciting thing about this, I think it's exciting, is this crisscross in the middle, because that's really unusual, and I think that is a fishing net that is, or a net basically, that's been thrown over the shrine, because this is a sea shrine. So I've got an article about that where I'm trying to prove that this is a net. But a lot of things with Minoan religion you can't prove. Like, for example, there's no actual examples of these sorts of altars, so we don't really know what they look like. There's pictures, but no examples. But with the stone altars, there are examples. Like, well, I don't have it. I mean, I might come up with, I don't know what's coming up. So these are the seals. You can see they're hard to see on the stone sometimes. That's what they look like when they're printed, and they would have been worn on the wrist, on a bit of leather, or maybe a pin, etc. And they, again, for verifying certain things, for sealing. Goods in the storeroom. And you go, well, what's a mud seal going to do? Anyone could just break that open. Yes, they could, but then people would know that you had broken in. So, and there may have been like a sort of a, we don't know what they thought. They may have thought there was sort of a magical or some sort of powerful, effect that would happen if you broke into the, if you broke the seal, the clay seal on the goods or whatever you were looking at to steal. So, okay, so now we're going to go into sort of the more Roman close type of material. So you've probably seen this picture before. This is from Pompeii. It was discovered not that long ago, maybe something like 2018, and it's often called a sorcerer's sort of amulet box and things like that. So now we're going to look at amulets. So an amulet is a good luck charm, and it's an object that's an object that protects its owner. And the word amulet comes from the Latin word amuletum, but now I can't speak Latin, so my Latin's going to be terrible, okay? So sorry about that. So anyway, that word amuletum or amuletum, it means an object that protects a person from trouble. And anything can function as an amulet. So gems, plant parts, animal parts, images and words. And amulets were particularly prevalent in ancient Egypt, Greece and Rome. And examples include all sorts of Egyptian faience, Greek jewellery and Roman phalloi. So let's just explain about that. So this blue stuff, that's faience, which I'll explain a bit more as I go along. There's, you know, a front-on phallus. There's where is I sort of, oh, see, this is like a genital, you know, front-on, but whereas this is more of an erect phallus. So, you know, the Romans loved the phallus to avert evil and that sort of thing. Then there's things like that's probably rock crystal, rings, metal, etc., etc. There's, you know, that sign. What else? Which Italians still do. There's teeth, all sorts of things. So that's just an example of a little treasure trove of interesting amulets. So amulets are made of various material, and they can be durable, so gold or silver, or lead for cursing, or perishable, so leather, papyrus, or leaves. And there's probably tons more amulets made of perishable material, except they don't survive anywhere except Egypt, because Egypt has very good preservation because it's so hot. But everywhere else where it rains and then dries and then rains and then dries, anything that's organic just decays. So let me just get this clip. So basically we're looking at faience. So faience is actually, so this is faience, this sort of thing. That's faience. Actually, they're probably faience. Metal, faience. So faience is actually sand. It's really interesting. So you get sand and some pigment, and you make a little mold of the thing you want to, you know, make, like a leaf, and then you squash the sand and the pigment in there, and then you put it in. You put it in fire. So what happens is the outside melts, like that's how glazed pottery works anyway. The outside melts and becomes shiny because it's, you know, sand is glass. And if you ever see a broken bit of faience, you can see the sand inside it, but it's, from what I've seen, it's just sort of quite white and powdery. It doesn't look like beach sand anymore. And so here we have an example of a whole lot of amulets. You know, we have Bez, who is the dwarf god, Egyptian dwarf god who protected pregnant women. The Jed pillar, which is the backbone of Osiris. Here's that Tuweret, the fat pregnant hippo that I mentioned before in regards to the Minoan genius, which in Crete now has a wasp waist, because everything in Crete has a wasp waist. Now that's metal, that's a fly. So the Egyptians thought flies were brave. So because you know how flies just keep annoying you, and you just hitting them and they're just like, I'm coming back. So yeah, they were attributed with bravery. And you know, we have, I think that might be Anubis or Set, etc., etc. So faience, so amulets in general were used for medical, social and religious purposes for healing, love, success and power and blessings from the gods. And they were made by ritual experts who selected the components known to be effective, which included the materials, the shape, the image and special words. So here's just some more faience. Actually, that's probably not faience. That's probably like, I don't know what that is, stone or something. Eye of Horus, that's lapis, that's faience. Thoth, and you can see his beak there, and they've had to have this bit of fill in there because if they just did a beak, it would probably get broken very quickly. So, and special words. So amulets also involved special words. And then just another thing about Egypt, you know, with Egypt, you know how hieroglyphs are like images? Well, hieroglyphs are like images that mean things. So they're words, but they're in pictorial form. A lot of Egyptian art also is a kind of word. I think these are actually hearts. I can't really quite remember, but there's examples of, say, an image of the sun god. Actually, was it? No, I think it was. No, it was Ramses. It was the king Ramses. So it's got a little child sitting with his finger in his mouth, which is the sign of childhood. There's a plant, and then there's a sun, and so this is a statue, and it actually, but it's also a word that says Ra. It says Ramses through the sun, the child, and this plant. It's really interesting. So a lot of Egyptian things that you think are pictures are kind of also got a word meaning. Anyway, so amulets also included rings and gems, and magical rings were called dactylios pharmakites. So originally to look at magical gems and jewellery didn't, so now with this is Greek examples, they didn't differ significantly from regular jewellery because the magical aspect was not engraved onto the jewellery, it would have been spoken over the jewellery. So an oral spell over the jewellery wouldn't have left any trace. Now let's have a look at what's next. Yes, there's just some Roman examples of phalli. There's that, you know, the young boy's amulet, the bulla. So the opposite practice of, you know, these have no text on them. The opposite practice is evident in that example of that gold lamella that was unrolled that I showed back here. Hang on. Where is it? So you can see here this has text on it, would have been rolled up like that, so you wouldn't really be seeing it once it was rolled up, but you know the text is in there. So that's got text, whereas these may have had verbal spells spoken over them. So these are really just examples of fantastic Greek jewellery. I don't know if these ones actually had spells spoken over them. Anyway, so Roman. And you know that, oh, and more Roman, the crescent was very, I think it was called a lunula, was very popular. But now we know that today we still have amulets, so we have Jewish, Christian, Muslim traditions with examples such as the mezuzah, the tefillin, the hand of Miriam or Fatima, the seal of Solomon, which is the hexagram or Star of David, the cross, Sacred Heart, rosaries, scapulars, the Nazar or Turkish evil eye repellent. And contemporary amulets include objects for, well, neo-pagan ones anyway, pentagrams, four-leaf clovers, a rabbit's foot, coral horns, and the chimaruta. This has been proposed to be like an Italian witchcraft charm by an author called Raven Grimassi, who kind of was trying to promote an Italian witchcraft to sort of compete in authenticity with British witchcraft, and he is right in regarding, you know, the age of Italian witchcraft is much older. But this is a sprig of rue, the herb rue, with these little charms on it. But in fact, it's actually a Neapolitan child's amulet, so they were quite popular in the 19th century. There's a whole lot at the Pitt Rivers Museum in Oxford, and they're really fantastic. That is probably a reproduction. These are old. That's a really interesting enamelled one. Anyway, they've been sort of adopted in Italian-American witchcraft as a witch's amulet, but they're not really a witch's amulet. So now we're getting on to what the topic, finally, we're getting on to what the topic of this talk actually is, which is magical gems. So magical gems are a specific category of ancient jewellery which overtly displays their powers through specific images, texts, and signs. So while gems could innately have magical power, the addition of divine or auspicious images and inscriptions increased their power. So we're quite used to the idea that, you know, stones have, you know, attributes that a lot of people think are magical, or, you know, crystals and things like that. So these are, you know, stones that had magical powers, but they've got these images and texts on them which increases their magical powers. So what is a magical gem? So magical gems are amulets. They are made of semi-precious stones of different colours such as jasper and hematite. They measured 10 to 40 millimetres in size, and they were usually set in rings or as pendants, as pieces of jewellery. And basically magical gems concentrate in a single object all the active ingredients of ancient magical technology: the powers of the stone, the colour of jewellery, and of performative words, images and signs. So the motifs engraved on them derive primarily from Egyptian, Greek and Jewish iconography, reflecting the transculturality of magical knowledge in the Roman imperial period. And this example down here, this is actually a modern copy. That's why it's so beautiful and shiny. But I put it in anyway because it's so gorgeous. So the main characteristics of magical gems. So the identification of magical gems relies on three formal characteristics: text, images and signs, and on three structural elements: engraving, material and shape. So there are three types of text that are found on magical gems. One is divine names such as gods, angels, or heroes. Two, magical words or formulas called voces magicae, magical voices, or barbara onomata, barbarous names. And these words and sounds were thought to be the secret names of deities and demons that controlled them. So most barbara onomata are not real words or words that humans understand, but they were believed to be a language that the gods understand. But some of them look like they may have been attempts to use foreign words, because, you know, often you think, oh, foreign words are more magical. So some of these magical words that really are thought only be a language that the gods understand, they may have kind of been attempts to write, or they may have been influenced by foreign words or foreign magical words. So because of the small size of the stone, spells or logoi are usually abridged. So letters can often suggest an auditory or visual effect, such as the repetition of the 7 vowels, or palindromes that can be read backward or forward. And words can be arranged in geometric forms, such as a triangle or a wing shape. So you can see a triangle in the upper left. So the third characteristic in regards to text is a meaningful inscription asking a god for help and protection, the granting of a charm or favour, charis, the basis of charisma, a health hygeia or luck tyche. The inscription can also indicate the healing purpose of the gem, such as stomachou for the stomach or skion for the hips. Sometimes the name of the wearer is added to individualize the wish. So there's 3 types of text, and then images. There's 2 main types of images found on magical gems. One, traditional, mainly Greek or Egyptian iconographical schemes such as Aphrodite, Anadyomene, or Harpocrates sitting on the lotus flower. So this is Aphrodite coming out of the sea after, you know, the story is Kronos cut off Uranus's testicles because Uranus wouldn't stop having sex with Gaia. Kronos threw them in the sea, and this foam started to appear, and then Aphrodite comes out, and it's the birth of Aphrodite. So this is her wringing out her hair, and this is the type of image that you'd see in other forms like statues and things like that. So that's a common Greek image. And then Harpocrates, you know, the child Horus sitting on a lotus, that's a common Egyptian image. So common images we used, but the other type of image is new images, such as these, sometimes created exclusively for the genre of magical gems. So this rooster-headed, snake-legged figure known as the anguipede, or the snake legs, and the lion-headed cnubus. So they're new. So another thing you'd see on magical gems are magical signs or characteres. So they're the third distinctive formal element of magical gems, and they're letter-like signs. Here's a whole lot of examples. They're letter-like symbols made of lines, circles, or loops. Characteres are also seen on other magical objects, like this is a defixione or lead curse tablet. Like voces magicae, the characteres were believed to summon and control divine powers. And a few characteres are regularly associated with specific deities like Heracles or Hercules. A triple kappa or triple K is associated with him, which you'll see a bit later. And the crossed triple S shape is associated with cnubus gems. So, some people think these letters may, or these characters may have been influenced by constellations. So, structural elements. Most magical gems are engraved on both sides and sometimes also on the edge. And the inscription is not engraved in mirror writing as for seals because they weren't for sealing. They were meant to be read directly on the stone. So the material is usually an opaque type of stone, the most popular being jasper, red, green, brown or yellow, including plasma, which is a dark green jasper, and heliotrope, green jasper with red spots, carnelian from yellowish to red, chalcedony from grey to whitish blue, bloodstone or hematite, which is like a weird, looks like metal, it's like a shiny greyish stone or blackish grey stone, and lapis lazuli, which we know is dark blue, often with gold flecks or pyrite flecks. So colour was often related to the function of the stone. So red jasper is prescribed to ease childbirth and is often carved with depictions relating to the birthing process. Yellow jasper often bears the image of a scorpion, according to the notion that like heals like. So an image of a scorpion will keep scorpions away or even fix scorpion bite. And milky stones help breastfeeding. So ancient books of stone correspondences, I'll just say in something in regard to breastfeeding, those Minoan stone seals that we saw ages ago, the stone ones, when Arthur Evans first went to Crete and was sniffing around and going, what's that mound? What's that mound? I'd like to excavate that mound. He originally went there to look for text, but he ended up kind of doing an excavation instead. But the Cretan women of the late 19th, early 20th century actually used to put those little stones in their well, I was going to say their bra, they probably didn't have bras, in the top of their clothing next to their breasts and called them milk stones. So because of course they'd be finding those all over the place in the fields and things. So that's just an interesting little digression about much later use of Minoan stones as milk stones, which they probably were not in the Bronze Age. Anyway, so where was I? Oh, so ancient books of stone correspondence were called lapidaries, and they provided the attributions of the stones, but they don't always agree. And that's because symbolism isn't just one thing. So, different people and different countries and different time periods have different beliefs about what is a symbol of what. They're not these permanent things. So it's not universal. So that's why some, lapidaries will say a completely different thing to others, because that's what the author thought. So another thing about magical gems is the shape. So most magical gems are oval with a trapezoid section and two flat faces. And some figures are associated with specific shapes, for example, the phoenix stone. And magical gems were never mass-produced. Some pieces are unique and were probably made on demand. So magical jewels were not, or magical gems were not amulets for the poor, because they were also part of jewellery, and they were usually mounted in rings and necklaces. So precious metal mounts have survived in some cases. Other stones show shell-like chippings on their edges, which suggest they were once forced out of their mounts, which you can see here. So you can see someone has, chipped them. I don't know if that one's been reset into something else, but chip, 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 chip. They've really wrecked it, probably because they wanted the gold. So magical gems, like regular gems, were also reused in later periods. So, and this is an interesting example. So this is Sigmund Freud's ring, because he was an antiquities collector and he collected gems as well. These aren't magical gems, but they're Roman or Greek or Roman gems. So this was his ring, and he gave special, ancient gem reset in modern rings. He gave them to his fellowship of the ring, so his favourite sort of acolytes, his inner circle of psychoanalytical students got these rings. And there was an exhibition, I've stolen this from the exhibition website, I can't remember where it was though, but they didn't do a catalogue, which was very annoying. So that's an example of, Roman or Greek or Roman gems used in the early 20th century. So magical gems as seals. So they're not meant to be used as seals, so you can print them in this, this is obviously modern, like plasticine or something, because they would have used clay, but they weren't meant for sealing. So a magical gem is asparagus, a seal in itself, bearing a print that's read directly onto the stone as though imprinted by a god, sealing its effectiveness. The term sphragus or sphragus, I prefer sphragus myself, was also used for a medical pill carrying a stamp with an image. Broken magical gems may have been pulverized. Now this is interesting. Broken magical gems may have been pulverized and drunk in powdered form as a medical treatment, like a pill. So hematite was considered like a powerful medicine as a blood stauncher, for example, a cure for eye diseases and venomous bites. Engraved with Sphragus Theou, the medicine of God, it worked like medicine and could be consumed like medicine. So, for example, some of these broken ones, someone might have actually broken a bit off to eat, or they could just be broken for other reasons, but, you could eat them. So another hematite gem is carved with the inscription Stomachou, which designates its power over stomach pain. because hematite also had power over digestion and internal bleeding. So phoenix gems, that's a phoenix gem there, this one here. Phoenix gems are digestive amulets, often made of hematite, and they're oblong, oval in shape, and they're often engraved with the designation of their function. So this one says PEP-D, digest, and it's got that Canubis character as the triple S on that side. Now, let's look at the anguipede. So that's one of those new types of images. So as mentioned above, some of the types of images are found exclusively on magical gems and related amulets. So this wouldn't be found as a statue or anything like that. They were created by ritual experts using specific religious and or magical elements from different cultural traditions in order to construct new powerful images. The most frequent image is the anguipede, made of a rooster-headed and snake-legged human figure in armour holding a whip in one hand and a round shield in the other. And you often see, you know, contemporary magical practitioners calling this figure a Abraxas or a Brassax, but really it's called the anguipede. So the anguipede is actually a new composite image related to an aspect of Israelite religion. The separate elements of the image, when brought together, express the Hebrew word Gevurah or Gevurah. So Gimel Bet Resh, and Gevurah, here's the tree of life. Gevurah is here. So that's, you know, that's not like ancient world, but I'm just showing you where Gevurah is on the tree of life, because a lot of contemporary magical practitioners are quite familiar with that diagram. So both the rooster's head and the male body can be read as Gever. The latter word is represented in the form of a warrior in a kurias, Gibor. The double snake's legs also relate to the same stem word. And this iconographic motive is a general symbol of the gigantes or gigantes, Gibor in Greco-Roman art. And this, in this case, connotes gigantic valor. So all of these elements constitute the image of a mighty Gevurah, God, the mighty one, Ha-Gevurah. So, you know, this is an aspect of God, and this is his mighty aspect, and that's what the anguipede is really about. And it's got Iyah, which is, you know, Yahweh. So it's what is it? So the elements that combine to form the figure of the anguipede express a mighty name of power, the name of the Almighty, at least in Jewish religion, or, you know, yeah, Jewish, I guess, in this period, not Israelite really. The shield designates God as one who protects with his shield, well known in the Greek New Testament, or Septuagint. The image does not represent God, only one of his names or powers, in this case strength, or, you know, valor or power. The anguipede is an invented image that incorporates the God of Israel into the broader magical koine, or, you know, common language of the Roman imperial period, or the Roman Empire, because, you know, it was multicultural. Now, Canubis. So a second composite figure that appears frequently on magical gems is the lion-headed snake Canubis. Both his name Canubis or Cnumus and sign, a triple-crossed S, are regularly found engraved on the gems. And Canubis is actually one of the minor figures in Egyptian astrology, one of the 36 decans, and he's been transformed here into a solar deity. And again, contemporary magical practitioners, particularly the Ordo Templi Orientis, they think this is the lion serpent, because they, you know, are supposed Gnostics. Yeah, I guess it's a lion serpent. But anyway, so he's really a decan, an Egyptian decan. So the decans are 36 groups of stars or small constellations used in ancient Egyptian astronomy, and they rose consecutively on the horizon, a new one rising every 10 days at dawn, right before the sun, termed the heliacal rising, and the term comes from the Greek dekanoi, or tenths. So Canubis has, now this is rather mundane, Canubis has power over digestive problems, and he appears primarily on transparent green stones such as chrysoprase, white stones such as chalcedony, and on black hematite uterus gems, which we'll see soon. So stomach, yes, because in the ancient world they didn't have super great hygiene, so they probably ate a lot of things that gave them terrible pains in the tummy. And I'll talk more about, oh, well, actually, I'm about to talk more about stomachs in a minute. Now, so Heracles, or Hercules, So because we're Roman, I should say Hercules. So another common image is Hercules along with 3 kappas. So here they are here. And his role was to control the belly. The 3 kappas may stand for the word colicky, as in colic, repeated 3 times, or the abbreviated form of a magical formula like cock, cook, cool, used against fever. So the purpose of putting Heracles on a gem to cure stomach ailments was because he had a reputation as a heavy eater who could stuff himself on anything without being sick. So Hercules gems were good for digestion because Hercules binges on food without negative consequences, so the gem owner wishes to be free from intestinal distress as well. And Hercules was also sexually gluttonous, and he's an insatiable lover who fathered an impressive number of children. So because he was also intimate with women's bellies and procreation, he was qualified to be a guardian of women, controlling a belly that comprises the uterus and all related disorders and events, including childbirth. And at least in Hippocratic medicine, which is Greek, they didn't do human anatomical dissection. So they were a little foggy about what was going on in the stomach. Obviously, they knew what was inside animals, and I'm not sure if other medical practitioners did do dissection, but the Hippocratic doctors said they didn't. And, you know, I'll talk a bit more about the wandering womb when I get to the uterus gems, but you know, stomachs, wombs, intestines, it was all kind of a big mixture in there. They didn't really know what was going on. And that's why they kind of generalized about the stomach area. So another figure that protected pregnancy was Hercules' lover, Omphale. She was a Lydian queen that he had to serve for 3 years to purify him from murdering Iphitus. And he had to dress as Hercules had to dress as a woman to help Omphale and her women with the spinning and weaving, but he eventually became her lover. And so Omphale is depicted on mainly red jasper gems as a naked pregnant woman in a frontal position, squatting with spread legs with distended belly. Her right hand is raised and she waves a club. And while images of Hercules show him strangling a lion, Omphale fights against a donkey that represents the Egyptian god Set. In Egyptian spells, Set or Set's sperm is compared with the poison of a scorpion and causes abortions, as he tried to do with the goddess Isis when she was pregnant with Horus. So this is an example of Omphale beating up a donkey representing Set. So she's fending him off to prevent a miscarriage. So her defensive gesture conveys the idea that this threatening power is under control. So these gems provide the image of a pregnant woman mastering her body and warding off malevolent influences. Omphale is also a magos, or a maga, a magician, who actively controls her body, knows how to expel malevolent entities, and watches over the health, sexuality, and fecundity of women. So now we'll look at a gem depicting Perseus. So a blue onyx gem depicts Perseus on one side, holding the head of Medusa here, and his weird little sword called a harpy, which has nothing to do with the harpies. And the inscription on the back basically says, "Flee Podgara," which is gout. Perseus pursues you. So it's trying to scare the gout away by having him chase it with the Medusa's head. So a series of gems depict the Egyptian god Harpocrates, or that's the Greek name for the child Horus, Egyptian Horus, as a fetus, with inscriptions such as "onto your little feet," commanding the child to come out from the womb. Other gems show him on the shoulders of the frontal-faced lion god Bez, who is the protector of newborn babies, or standing before the god Khnum, who makes children on his potter's wheel, or sitting on a uterus and holding the key, which we'll see examples of soon, controlling the time of his birth. So who made magical gems? We don't know exactly who made magical gems, but we do know that making them required 2 distinct types of expertise. One, the knowledge of a ritual expert who designed a gem and performed a rite over it when the object was finished. And 2, the practical skills and tools of an engraver, a dactylographos, who carved the gem following the instructions of the ritual expert. And these could have been one and the same person. So who used them? Well, magical gems were quite expensive to acquire because they are generally carved on both sides with special motifs and inscriptions instructed by experts and mounted in jewellery, especially gold jewellery, which belonged to the social elite. And we know that both women and men wore them. So how were they used? Magical prescriptions instruct that magical gems were to be consecrated before being used. For example, in the Greek magical papyri, a stone engraved with Serapis, which is the Ptolemaic composite deity paired with Isis. Anyway, depicting Serapis seated holding a scepter on top of which an ibis stands. So you've got to insert that stone into a ring. And in the case of need, the spell must be said holding the ring in the left hand and waving a spray of olive and laurel twigs towards a lamp. The ring's then put on the index finger of the left hand, and you've got to go to sleep holding the stone next to your left ear. In another set of instructions, the stone is fastened to a vessel and then a spell is pronounced. And in another, a food offering is made. And so interesting about the food offering, you can consider this miniature art, especially if they depict deities, to actually be like miniature shrines. So you can think of it as a shrine on the body. So like all amulets, magical gems had to be in contact with the body of the patient. Gems were therefore set in rings or worn on pendants. For example, the green Canubis stone would have to hang at precisely the length that would allow the stone to touch the chest above the stomach, because it was, supposed to be fixing the stomach. So position was important, and gems needed to be tied near the ailment, around the neck, the arm, or the thigh, or on the back, and their effect varied according to where they were placed. For example, an eagle stone stops miscarriage when attached to the left arm, but it provokes childbirth when it's attached to the back. And there's actually some Greek vase paintings that show women with little tiny straps with little magical gems, or some sort of gem, we don't really know if it's a magical gem because you can hardly see them, on their thighs and on their arms and things like that. So that's interesting. Okay, where are we up to? Which disease? Okay, so most healing gems relate to an internal and hence mysterious process. The majority of medical gems relate to diseases involving the belly, more specifically the stomach or the uterus. Both areas that have unusual capacities, such as an independent will and uncontrolled movements, usually dangerous one. Both are located in the abdomen, which is a mysterious area producing noises. Now, I've just got to talk about the wandering womb. And these are wombs, which I'll explain a bit in a minute. So in ancient Greek medicine, at least, which I know more about, the male doctors thought that the womb just moved around wherever it wanted. So you might have a headache if you're a woman because your womb's gone up there. Or it might be in your shoulder. Who knows where it's gone? Does what it wants. And how do you get it back? Well, if it's up here, burn something very smelly near your ear and squat over a beautiful, lovely, sweet incense. And the uterus goes, it's like, what's that? Oh, that's awful. I've got to, oh, what's that? And it goes down. What's that smell? So that's one way to tempt the uterus to come back to where you want it to be. So magical gems didn't focus on areas like arms, hands, legs and feet because they used anatomical votives for those at healing deities like Asclepius and Hygeia. I've got some examples of those a bit later on. So one type of gem is for the hips, and it magical gem depicts a reaper with a sickle because he has to harvest and symbolically cut the pain. And they weren't used for illnesses like epilepsy or fever or rabies because those disorders were treated with other methods such as amulets. So now we're looking at uterine gems. So the largest category of magical gems was for protection of the uterus. And these were usually engraved on hematite or bloodstone, which is an iron oxide that was believed to control flow of blood and that warded off the frightening risk of hemorrhage by its staunching power. So red jasper was also used for this. So hematite was also empowered by a male generative potency because it was believed to be the petrified blood of Uranus after he was castrated by Kronos, which I've mentioned before. So uterine gems usually include an image of an upside down pot, which represents the womb, as a medical cupping vessel. And sometimes it includes wavy lines. that depict the ligaments and the fallopian tubes. And at the mouth of the cupping vessel, this is a key. So that, I know it looks like a coffee grinder, but this is actually a key at the mouth of the cupping vessel. And it symbolises the opening and the closing mechanism of the womb. So different uterine movements needed to happen at the proper time. The womb, it needs to open periodically to release menses and to attract male seed, and then it has to close to retain it, and it has to stay closed to prevent miscarriage or loss of nutriments for the fetus. So at the time of delivery, then it has to open again to release the child. So sometimes Hippocrates is depicted sitting on the uterus holding the key as if he controlled the moment of his own birth. And the scene is encircled by the Ouroboros. You can see the snake here with its tail in its mouth, creating a sort of a magical space, protecting the uterus and the embryo against malevolent forces. So as I mentioned before, the womb was considered to be an organ with a mind of its own and to move around. On the reverse of uterine gems, spells were written to control the movements of the womb inside the female body. For example, stop, or contract womb lest typhon overcome you, or fasten the womb in its right place. Now, another type of spell, erotic magic. So here we've got Aphrodite and Diomede again, and here's quite a common type of 3D image of that. As I said before, this is from the repertoire of Greco-Roman art, whereas the Anguipede and Canubis are not. So erotic magic is also represented quite frequently on magical gems, on stones such as lapis lazuli, hematite and jasper, and the most frequent type appears on lapis lazuli, depicting Aphrodite holding up her hair in a seductive gesture. And Hippocrates also appears on love gems, sitting on a lotus flower surrounded with vocais magicae, or spells asking for the recipient to be given charis or grace in order to seduce the beloved. And some gems combine Aphrodite on one side and Hippocrates on the other. Now, this is the end of the magical gems bit, because then it goes into this healing sort of section of the talk. So do you want me to stop there?
We're very happy for you to keep going if you like.
Okay, I'll just keep going a bit. So this is quite interesting because I did mention votive, anatomical votives, which I'll show you in a minute. So Asclepius, because this talk goes into ancient medicine, Asclepius is the Greek god of medicine. He was the son of a god Apollo and a mortal princess Coronis. And Coronis betrayed Apollo, so he killed her lover Ischus, while his sister Artemis killed Coronis. And you may know that Apollo and Artemis are, they're pretty quick to kill people. So women who died in childbirth, it said, they were killed by Artemis. And so they're always, but not always, but they're quite often shooting people with their bow and arrows. Anyway, they killed Coronis, but she was pregnant, a bit like Semele, who's mother of Dionysus, but Coronis was pregnant with Asclepius, and so Apollo had to rescue the unborn child from her funeral pyre. So Asclepius is, I think in Latin is Asclepius. Anyway, Asclepius is both a god of healing and a god of plague, like Apollo is as well. If you're familiar with the Iliad, because Agamemnon steals the priest of Apollo's daughter to make a concubine, a war concubine, the priest asks for her back, and Agamemnon's like, you've got to be joking. The priest goes and prays to Apollo, asks Apollo to afflict the Greeks with a plague, which he does, and it doesn't stop until Agamemnon gives Chryseis back to her father Chryses, and that's when he takes Achilles' Briseis, and that's when that's when all the trouble starts. The wrath of Achilles. One of the examples of the wrath of Achilles. Anyway, so Apollo and Asclepius, both gods of plague and healing. So Apollo, interestingly, derives from a Near Eastern god called Reshef, because remember, culture, I know this sounds really diffusionist, but culture, a lot of Greek and I guess whatever Roman content, whatever Greek content the Romans adopted, came from the Near East and the Mediterranean. They were in everyone was moving around. People weren't just staying home going, I'm just staying in Italy. Not that they called it Italy, but people were on boats sailing around trading from certainly the Bronze Age, and people boats were invented really in the Paleolithic. There's a lot of evidence for a lot of sailing around the Cycladic islands in the Aegean, etc. Anyway, so Apollo probably derives from Reshef, the Near Eastern god of healing and plague. Apollo doesn't appear in Linear B, so it's like, oh, is he Greek at all? Because in later Greece, they say, Apollo is the most Greek of Greek gods. But there is an epithet Paeon that does appear in Linear B, and that is and it means healer, and that's a later epithet of Apollo. So it may have been a situation where there was a healer god in Greece, and he kind of got mixed with Apollo when Apollo kind of was constructed. So anyway, moving along. So Asclepius, half-mortal son of Apollo, he's usually paired with the goddess Hygeia, although sometimes she's his daughter, and he has, several other daughters born by a nymph called Epione. And so his daughters are Hygeia, hygiene, goddess of cleanliness; Iaso, goddess of recuperation from illness; Akiso, goddess of the healing process. This one's hard to pronounce. Igli, not ugly, Igli or Igli, the goddess of good health; and Panacea or Panakia, goddess of universal remedy. So the original Hippocratic oath began with the invocation, I swear by Apollo the physician, and by Asclepius, and by Hygeia, and by Panacea, and all the gods. So Asclepius was educated by the centaur Chiron, who taught lots of heroes, who instructed him in the art of medicine. Asclepius was also associated with a snake, either because while he was studying with Chiron, a snake licked his ears and taught him secret knowledge, or he killed a snake with his staff, and then another snake came along and brought a herb and to the dead snake and made it come back to life, and then Asclepius took the herb and made a man come back to life. And anyway, images of Asclepius show him holding this snake entwined staff, which is still in symbol of medicine today. So Asclepius became such a proficient healer and brought so many people back to life that the world became overpopulated, and so Zeus killed him. That's Zeus's remedy. It's like, oh, that's annoying. I'm just going to kill you. I won't try and explain anything, just killing you. With his thunderbolt. He's impulsive. So then Zeus banished Apollo from Olympus and made him serve so he killed Apollo's son because he was bringing humans back to life too much, and then he banished Apollo from Olympus and made him serve a mortal called Admetus for a year, and you can read about that in a Euripides play called Alcestis. And anyway, after Asclepius' death, Zeus placed him in the sky as the constellation Ophiuchus, the serpent bearer, which you can Google. Now, Hygeia was the goddess or personification of health, cleanliness, and hygiene. And while Asclepius was associated more with healing, Hygeia was associated with the preservation of sickness and the continuation of good health. And she's often depicted as a young woman feeding a snake that was wrapped around her body or drinking from a jar that she's holding. And statues of Hygeia were covered with women's hair and pieces of cloth as offerings. She's also an asteroid in astrology, like Ophiuchus is a constellation. Now, let's quickly have a look at healing temples. So you're probably well aware of the sanctuary at Epidaurus or Epidavros in modern Greek. So probably the most well-known healing temple of Asclepius, which is called an Asclepion, is the one at Epidaurus in Greece, dating to the 300s BCE. There were lots of Asclepius temples, including on the island of Kos, where the father of medicine Hippocrates started his career, and at Pergamon in southwestern Turkey. So healing sanctuaries were places where people came to be cured by the god, usually through dream incubation. There's a fantastic new book about dream incubation that I've got in a pile over there that I should try and show you if I remember. So for dream incubation, basically you first had to be purified, do offerings to Asclepius, then you'd spend the night in the holiest part of the sanctuary called the abaton or aditon, and then you'd have a dream, hopefully, and then you'd have to tell. So here's someone she's asleep dreaming. Here's some, other people. This is Asclepius and Hygeia. You can tell because they're much bigger. So Asclepius is healing her in her sleep. So you'd hopefully have a relevant dream, and then you'd tell the priest, and they would prescribe the appropriate therapy. They'd also use non-venomous snakes in healing rituals, and sometimes they would also use dogs to lick the wounds of sick patients. And in thanks to the god, cured patients would dedicate models of limbs and texts telling the story of their cure. And usually I have a bit of text with examples, which I don't know if I have here. I don't know if I brought it. Hang on. Yeah, I do actually have some testimonials. I will read them out because they're quite funny. Cleo was pregnant for 5 years. After she had been pregnant for 5 years, she came as a suppliant to the god, and she slept in the sanctuary. As soon as she came out of the inner sanctuary and was outside the temple and outside the enclosure, she gave birth to a son. This son, as soon as he was born, washed himself in the spring, and he walked around with his mother. After this experience, she put up a votive offering. Wonder not at the greatness of this tablet, but of the god, because he healed Cleo after she'd been pregnant and had carried this burden for 5 years, until she slept in the sanctuary. And let's see another one. Andromache from Epirus for children. She fell asleep and saw a dream. It seemed to her that a handsome youth uncovered her, and after that the god touched her with his hand. After this a son was born to Andromache, whose father was Erebus. So I wonder if this was possibly someone at the sanctuary had sex with her, but she has to say, yes, I had a son and his father. I'm going to name his father. I don't know. I'm just speculating about that. Because really it was someone at the sanctuary. Now, another one, Agameda of Chios. She slept in the sanctuary in order to have children and saw a dream. She thought that a snake lay on her stomach while she slept. After this, 5 children were born to her. And Nicasibula, a Messenian, slept in the sanctuary in order to have children and saw a dream. The god seemed to come to her carrying a snake that went towards her, and that she had intercourse with the snake. After this, she bore 2 male children within the year. So they're kind of some extreme examples of the testimonials. They weren't all extreme. And this is a uterus. That's like your innards. That's, I think, meant to be a bladder. There's some intestines, and if you go to the Temple of Asclepius at Epidaurus, there's heaps and heaps of these lovely votive objects. So I think, yeah. And then really it just goes into Chiron, and that sort of turns into something about astrology. So I probably don't really need to. So I'll probably just end there with Chiron. That's Achilles. That's Chiron tutoring Achilles, because as I said before, Chiron taught lots of heroes, and he taught. He was very knowledgeable, and he taught Asclepius as well. So he knew about medicine as well. So I'm going to stop there, and that will be the end of that. Okay.
Brilliant. That's very fantastic. So what we'll do at this stage is just check if anybody online may have some questions. While they're thinking about that, I'll pose one to you first. I guess I'm particularly interested there, Doctor, in some of the techniques and how they produced some of those rings and some of those jewellery, and in particular, I guess some of the early Minoan gold rings there. Are you able to elaborate a little bit more on perhaps how that engraving process went about and the tools they used?
Yeah, hang on. Let me just go back to those, and I'll have a look at some of them.
Yeah, sure.
Going back to the Minoan, let's have a look. So, something like this, that they use, sorry. So they basically use, gouging tools for this. So this is all engraved. Hang on. So this isn't a good example because these are usually hollow, and it's kind of made in the same way, but this is solid, which is a little unusual. And this, the ring part, that actually goes, if you see x-rays of them, that sort of goes inside about, I don't know, like half a centimetre or something, and they're all soldered. And then on the underside, there's a sort of what they call the ring bed, so that it's actually curved underneath the ring. Because some people have said, you know, they're so small, did they even wear them on their fingers at all? Or did they maybe wear them on necklaces and things like that? Because there's this curve inside, on the underside of the ring, we know, or we suspect that they did, you know, definitely wear them on fingers. So, hang on, I got a cough. Now, in regard to the stone seals, so basically they had drills and that sort of thing, which they had like a bow, you know, to make it sort of go fast. They had a bow, which I'm not an expert on the construction of or how they engraved the seals, but I do know they had like a bow, and that sort of powered your little drill and other things. Yeah, so they definitely had drills and other sort of stone abrading, and you know, like emery paper. Actually, you can get emery from Naxos, which is a Aegean island, so they would have had that. But yeah, the metal ones were certainly gouged with, you know, burins and things like that. But these were, I believe, these are more engraved with, you know, abrading and fast-moving things like drills and little filey things. But yeah, because my topic, most tree cult scenes, which is what my PhD are on, are actually in the gold rings. Not so much. There's actually only one that's in a stone seal, so I'm not as expert on the stone seals, especially not on their construction. Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's good. The last question I guess I had was particularly concerning the magical gems. Throughout the Mediterranean, were there areas geographically where you perhaps saw those in higher concentrations than in other areas where they were found?
You know what, I think I actually have a note about that, so I'm just going to have to look in my notes.
Sure.
But I'm not sure, so let me just have a look here. Hang on.
While you're looking there, I'll just look to the people online.
Sorry, I got production centres, so let's just go back to some magical gems. Wait a minute. Magical gems, where are you? Magical gems. Something nice to look at, such as, let's look at this one. Okay. So most magical gems were made and used predominantly in the eastern part of the Mediterranean, Greece, Turkey, Egypt, and the Levant. So although during the Roman Empire, they would not have been created in a single centre, but it's hard to determine where they were made because an engraver can work anywhere, following the instructions of a written recipe or simply copying another gem. The gem itself can travel with its owner and end up anywhere. For example, the Anguipede gems were widespread throughout the Roman Empire, and that's another thing with Minoan seals and sealings. Just because they were found in a certain location in Crete or Greece doesn't mean they were made there, because they're so easily portable. Now let's see if there's anything else about, yeah, that's production centres. I think that's all I've got about that. Hang on, health, focusing, disease, what purpose? Yeah, no, that's all I've got. So basically Eastern Mediterranean, and portable, very portable, and they don't really know where, I can't think of any examples. There's actually heaps of books you can get. Wait a minute, I'll answer the question. I can't think of any examples that I've read about where they've gone, oh, yippee, we've dug up what's definitely a magical gem sort of workshop. But I'll just say there's a lot of fantastic books about you know, these magical gems. I was just going to say, you can get them free in PDF form, but it's not exactly legal. It's from, do you know the site LibGen, Library Genesis?
I think I haven't heard of that. Yeah, okay.
Yeah, anyway, there's a lot of magical gem books that you can get from there. There's heaps, they're so beautiful. But also, of course, academic articles and things like that, if anyone has academic library access. So, any other questions?
Do you have any books you could recommend?
Ooh. oh, hang on, I'll show you a really interesting one. Wait a minute, I've just got to get it. So this one is quite recent by Christopher. Can you see that? By Christopher Faraone. Can anyone see anything that I'm showing?
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Yeah.
I could just bring it out if you like.
I cannot see it.
Okay, well, it's called The Transformation of Greek Amulets in Roman Imperial Times, and it's by Christopher A. Faraone, and I'll just spell his last name, Faraone. So that's a really nice book. Well, it probably came in about, well, it's 2018. I think I got it in about 2009. So that's really interesting, and it's got tons and tons of pictures. It's pretty fat. It's a goodie. It's really good. Other books, I don't think I've got. Oh, there is one that I think I'd have to run way down the other end of the house to get. But yeah, so I'll just recommend this one. The bibliography in this one will also be very helpful. But I could recommend examples later. Just like right now, I don't think. Oh, what else? Well, hang on. Let me just. For example, this has Roman stuff in it, collecting. It's just basically about collections, because a lot of the Roman magical gems and Roman gems in general are published sort of as separate collections, because a lot of them are in private collections. So this one, Collecting and Collectors from Antiquity to Modernity. Okay, so basically so I don't know if you can, so there's, wait a minute, I'll turn off this light. So there's, this one, very shiny. So, and also, is that back to front?
No, that's good. No, that's perfect.
Yes.
Yep.
It's back to front to me. So that's just, that's just a thin book. But now I'll show you that, wait a minute. So this is the fantastic Christopher Faraone one, which has lots of lovely it's got lots of colour pictures in there and lots of interesting chapters. That's great. But also for Aegean, I don't know if you're interested in Aegean, like there's Olga Kriskowska. This is sort of quite a famous one. That's Aegean stone seals. But there's also, this has come out recently, Seals and Sealing in the Ancient World. That's got like, because there's also cylinder seals, which are, more Mesopotamian, which are also really interesting. They're the ones that you roll, because these ones I've been, Aegean gems are stamp seals. The magical Greek and Roman magical gems, they're not really for sealing, but if you were going to seal, they'd be a stamp seal, whereas in Mesopotamia they have cylinder seals, which are the ones that roll. They're just fantastic. They're tiny, and some of them are just so intricate and interesting. Ow. Anyway, yeah, so...
What's the author of the last book of Seals and Sailing in the Ancient World? It's a bit fast, but not that fast.
This one, who is the author? It is... it was edited by a whole lot of people, which I'll try and show you. Yeah. So this is actually a really good book, which I'm supposed to read that, and I really haven't. I've read bits of it. I can show you, maybe I can show you my book now. So my book basically is this book, and it's got lots of pictures. For example, it's got appendices. So the pictures are in 3 appendices in the back, and basically it's about images of their ritual scenes involving trees on primarily gold rings, but a little bit in fresco and other media, and a bit of ivory, but mainly seals. Because with Minoan seals, because there's so many, that's the biggest category of evidence to tell us about Minoan religion. So, yeah, that's why seals are important in Minoan religion. So magical gems. So, yeah, it's really annoying for me because, like, I'm merely meant to be focusing on the Bronze Age, but I love to, like, focus on other periods as well. And also recently, because I'm about to do an article, it's a conference paper. It's not till February, but I have to get in the mood now. There's this fantastic book. Oh, I'll show you. This book about Diana, Roman religion, and the cult of Diana, which I've had for years, and I've also met the author, which was an embarrassing situation, which I'll explain. Now I'm reading that because what I'm really interested in the end really is nature sanctuaries, and this is a nature sanctuary. The Minoan examples that I do in my PhD, ultimately they're nature sanctuaries, so that's what I'm interested in. The author of that, I met her in Rome. There was a conference in Rome in 2009, and I'd done some Roman subjects, but I really didn't know that much about it, and I had her book, but I hadn't read it, and I met her at this conference. I said, "Oh, are you the author of that Diana book?" She goes, "Why don't we go to lunch and we'll discuss it?" And she probably just really regretted going to lunch with me because she would have realized that I was just so utterly basic. And she asked me a question. I'd mainly been, although I had her book and was super interested, I'd mainly been looking at the cult of Isis in Rome, so I was totally in that headspace. But even that, I couldn't answer the question properly. So she goes, "Oh, I bet you've had to look at Plutarch or something." And I said, "Oh yeah, because I had to look at, I can't remember what it was, the life of Mark Antony or something." But what she really meant was the Isis and Osiris, the big Isis and Osiris myth that's in Plutarch. Is it Plutarch or whoever it is? But I was just like, oh my God. Anyway, I just because I'm reading that at the moment, I keep going, oh, it was so embarrassing going to lunch with her. Oh, because she probably thought I was going to ask her really sensible questions about the book, and I don't even know what I said, but certainly nothing very brainy. So that was the end of that.
Very good. Any other questions before we wrap up? I think that was quite comprehensive. All right, look, to summarise there, fantastic presentation there, Dr. Tully. Look, that certainly opened up a whole new world for me. Just to hear the links and the stories between particularly the different materials and that of the gods. And I was particularly fascinated with particularly the level of detail in the Minoan gold rings. That was actually really quite fascinating. And to see the language and the meaning through the various jewellery pieces as well. And of course, I guess some of the trivial and trivia information there, such as drinking of the pulverised gems to aid in healing, was fascinating to hear about as well. But look, I just want to extend my gratitude and thanks on behalf of Australia Nova Romana and Nova Roma International in general for your valuable time and spending that here with us and sharing your expertise and knowledge on the subject. So, gratias, Tibiago. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
Well, you're welcome. I'm really interested. I'm just really interested in the ancient world, and it's good to be able to talk to people that are actually interested in it and that know about it. So that's, thanks for inviting me. And now that I know how to use this sort of, whatever this program is called, I can't remember what it's called, free conference call.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I ever have to use this again, I'll be an expert.
That you shall. Thank you for persisting with the technology. That's very good. All right, there. Well, thanks for those that are watching this either live or in the recording on the future, and we'll stop the recording there.